Joining us now, veteran Navy captain, veteran Navy nuclear engineer, Brent Sadler with the Heritage Foundation. It's good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us again. What's your reaction to all this? Does it mean could we see U.S. troops in Iran to take out the uranium? What do you think?
Well, thanks for having me back, and it's certainly been an interesting turn of events in the last several days. The short answer is there's no indication of preparations for an invasion, but of course that's been known for quite a while. But going in and acquiring the remnants of the enriched uranium, I think U.S. forces need to be present when any excavation is done by the Iranians to try to get back to it. It can't be done uncontrolled because, again, we want all of that material accounted for and then being able to go wherever we suspect there may be more. Again, the longer term piece of this is they can never have a nuclear program, and it's good to hear the president is very forceful on that point. 5 years, 20 years, never is the only answer that's acceptable.
Yeah, there were the New York Times, ABC reported a minimum 20-year deal. The president's saying no to a 20-year deal. He's saying just no to that. So do you expect Iran to cave? Iran's economy is in free fall. It just raised its minimum wage a huge 60% to keep up with 60% hyperinflation. Up to half of its population is in poverty.
Well, the key measure is not how much money that the regime is losing, because that's not the measure that they use to judge their actions. It's about regime survival. And so if the pressure of the economic blockade on these ports in Iran is enough to start to apply more pressure and scare away its last remaining benefactors, notably in Beijing, then that might actually push them to realize that continuing on this path is no different than regime death. And so then they would change their negotiating point. Okay. Of course, it's up to the Iranian people. Hopefully they'll change this regime. And if not, the regime itself will change its own nature, because as long as they have in their heart death to America, they're not a country that's going to be at peace with their neighbors. Certainly not Israel. Will continue to be a threat to American citizens' lives, as well as working to undermine American interest around the world, and that just can't stand.
Captain, there's been a lot of Democrat pushback, certainly Democrat hot takes, top spin on what's going on. Let's get your take on Obama's former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on MS Now, criticizing the Trump administration, talking about how she engaged in secret talks with Iran under Obama, claiming they tried to stop Iran from ever getting a nuclear bomb. That's not how Obama's deal worked. But first, listen to this. Watch.
When I was Secretary of State and beginning the secret negotiations with Iran to try to reach a nuclear weapons deal to prevent them from ever having a nuclear arsenal, it was a very slow, deliberative process. This is hard work. You don't just show up in Geneva or Islamabad, talk for a bunch of hours and go away. This is hard, disciplined effort that has to go into diplomacy.
Well, first of all, they didn't just show up in Islamabad, right? They prepared. So that's kind of an attack by Hillary Clinton. That's false. She also claimed that they tried to stop Iran from, quote, ever having a nuclear arsenal. That's misleading. Obama's Iran nuclear deal had sunset provisions where Iran could begin enriching uranium again after just 15 years. They sent nearly $2 billion in cash to Iran's terror regime and lifted sanctions, letting Iran access $50 billion of frozen assets. All of that failed. Iran was hot on the pursuit of a nuclear bomb.
Well, Secretary Clinton's track record as Secretary of State is not one that she should be standing up and saying and shouting its glorious successes. It's anything but. To include the Iran deal, shoveling on board tons of cash in the orders of billions of dollars to buy off the regime to get a deal to set up an election favorable and also to build up a legacy for Obama, who was going out of the White House, certainly was not a deal that we should have stuck with. It was the deal that was only going to kick the can down the road till if she won the election, would have been out of office.
Brent Sadler, thank you so much. Thank you for your service to America. We appreciate you so much.